Julie Fabio. Ron Miscavige recently talked about his frustrations with our government. It seems as if not one politician in the U.S. says or does anything. Why is this? I really don't think they could get away with litigating the government to death again. We are in different times. Am I wrong to assume this? It boggles the mind that nothing is done. Are they simply afraid that it will hurt their career if they take on a church because of religious freedom? What is the reason nobody seems to do anything? This is a business. How on earth can they not see this? Oh, Julie. Okay, well, I've addressed this before, but, there was just an article put up about the IRS recently and how they simply don't have the manpower to even go after rich people. Because when you go auditing people who have a lot of money or wealth, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and takes more agents and it's more involved. So it's easier to go after the poor people. And so that's what the IRS does. Let's all remember that the IRS are not the good guys, right? These are the tax revenue collection division of the U.S. government, and they're taking money, right? They're not the good guys. But the problem is that, good or bad, however you look at taxes or however you look at all that stuff, they are undermanned. The funding for the IRS has been being taken away by Senate Republicans, by the way. And so the amount of money that they have to invest in hiring more accountants, hiring more auditors, hiring more staff is less and less and less. And so they have been reduced in their manpower. Also, there are not even, as Jeffrey Augustine and I have talked about, they are not even the regional people and the people whose job it is to go after organizations that are abusing like their charitable status or tax-exempt status. Those people aren't even on the job. So you've really only got two people in the entire government structure who can order or execute a program or plan to remove Scientology's tax-exempt status. One of them is the Secretary of the Treasury, and the other one is the IRS Commissioner, and neither one of them are at all interested or have any compulsion or desire to go after the Church of Scientology, given the bigger picture items that they are dealing with all the time. Scientology is a very small problem to them. And there is no public, huge public discourse on this. There's no Senate committees or investigations about this. In other words, there's no political will to do anything about this. And the IRS has got its hands full already to the point that they're not even auditing all the people they should be auditing, much less going after these organizations. None of what I'm saying excuses any of this or makes it okay or rationalizes it. And I'm totally not okay with any of this. It's just the situation. And it really and this is just one area. The FBI, not entirely different. Local police, the LAPD. I mean, the LAPD is kind of its own thing along with the Clearwater PD. Those guys are just bought off. Period. I mean, they're just bought off. But the FBI's not bought off. The IRS isn't bought off. They just don't want to take the trouble, and they don't have any reason to do so because they're not. The things that motivate them are not, every little group. I mean, there are 5,000 plus destructive cults in the world, hundreds, thousands of them in America, of all different stripes, all different walks, all different sizes. And it would be wonderful if the IRS would man up and actually, put some kind of task force together or put some sort of unit together to investigate these groups, audit the hell out of them, and take away their tax exemption when they found to be abusing it. But the IRS isn't motivated to do anything like that. And in fact, like I said, up until I think this year, their funding was going down and down and down. And it takes a lot of money to take on a group like the Church of Scientology. The Scientology doesn't have anything else to do except fight for its survival with its billions of dollars. And the IRS does not have a budget like that. If you look at the U.S. government as this monolithic organization where all of our money goes into it and they've got access to billions of dollars, you're looking at our government the wrong way. It doesn't work like that. It's broken up into all these different pieces and parts, and each different piece and part is allocated a certain amount of money, and they got to make it work with what they've got. That's all they're going to get. And, one of the ways that Scientology defeated the IRS back in 93 is they wore them down budgetarily. They went after them with suits. They went after them in the press. They went after them for years, not days, not months, years of campaigning against the IRS. And the IRS couldn't deal with it, and they finally just like, okay, that's it. We're done. Enough. We'll give you the tax exemption, And of course, Scientology had to jump through some hoops to do that. But in the end, Scientology won bigly, and the IRS, kind of just was just tired of it, So they're not in any way motivated to go back into it again. They don't have the money for it, and they don't have the resources for it. And it's really a shame that that's where we're at with this, that it's that, banal, it's that, like, stupid. But that, as far as I can tell, that's the situation. It's not a matter of individuals in the IRS don't see the threat of the Church of Scientology or don't see the problem. It's not, hell, maybe the IRS commissioner even can see the problem. But what's he going to do? And what other priorities does he have on his plate? I don't know what makes up that guy's day. So I'm not going to make stuff up and say, well, he's busy with other things. I'm just saying I don't know. But I do know for sure that the Church of Scientology ain't on his to-do list. And we have worked very hard to try to get it onto his to-do list, and we haven't really gotten there. And I think it would require a lot more public awareness and a lot more public demand than we've generated. And that's kind of where that's at. So instead of trying to get the government to step in and do something about this, because it is endlessly frustrating. Leah has certainly been frustrated by it. I've been frustrated by it. All of us critics have been. Instead, we've got the civil suit route, which is active and moving right now, and that is very, very a good way to go after them. And that's what we've got, and I don't really know what else to say about that. I wish I had bigger, better answers. But, this is kind of how this kind of, if you want to call it evil or this kind of criminal behavior is allowed to go on, is just because of the banality of the systems that we have and their inability to deal with groups that can outdo them or outlast them, or wear them down. And that's where we're at. And I've also talked, of course, about the religious freedom aspect of this. And I will say again that part of the picture here is not just government, overburdened or under-financed government divisions or organizations. It's also the fact that there is it is not small. It is not an insignificant number of people. It is a huge, huge lobby on the part of these churches, because these guys are seeing the writing on the wall that they are not able to avoid criminal prosecution for child abuse or child sexual assault, or some of the stuff Keith Renier was getting up to with NXIVM, where they were branding women. When it's that, oh my God, then the FBI will step up, or then these guys will go in after them. And so the churches are seeing the writing on the wall here that now they're being gone after for criminal activity when they can prove it or show it, or when it's that blatant and obvious. And so they have increased the amount of lobbying and work that's being done in D.C. to protect religious freedom. And you saw Trump just a couple weeks ago bragging about how he had signed something into law, or something had there was legislation moving forward on protecting religious freedom. And that's the most disgusting euphemism ever, because what it, of course, is really all about is giving Christians the right to, in America, to have their way and to remove the walls of separation of church and state under the guise of religious freedom. But that's kind of a whole separate topic. But I thought I would mention it here because that lobby and those efforts that are occurring there are not insignificant, and they play a part in this whole picture of also how these cults like Scientology escape notice or escape prosecution. So that's That's an answer for you. I know it's not a real super hopeful one, and I know it's a bad, it kind of sucks. And it does, and it's why we keep fighting and keep putting it out there for you guys to see that these groups are out there. They are bad. And if we can get to you guys, and you guys can tell your friends and so on and so on and so on, right? Then these groups will die off. It's slow going, but they will. They will die off on their own. Because, as I've said from the very, very beginning of putting content out here, their self-destruction is in their DNA. That works out not just for Scientology, but almost all these groups. So many of them just implode all on their own. So eventually that is what's going to happen to Scientology. Come one way or another, that is what's going to happen eventually. I'm sure of that. How long it takes, how much patience we have to have, how many more abuses we have to hear about, how much more nonsense has to be exposed. That's a question, and that's why we keep fighting the fight and we don't give up. So anyway, I hope that gives some clarification on this without making it sound like it's all hopeless, because it's not all hopeless, but it's a tough fight.